Hi, I'm Erin Spors, and today we're going to sit with and talk about shame. It can be a really big, difficult topic to work with, not just because it's really uncomfortable and painful, but because it's so painful that many of us are really, really good at hiding from it and not feeling it, not letting it in at all. And so just for our practice today, I'm going to ask you to just hold space for the possibility that it's there, because it probably is. And maybe it shows up in your practice today, and maybe it doesn't. But we'll practice this technique of mindful sitting, mindful awareness, regardless of whether you're able to let it in, access that feeling of shame today. So what is shame? What's it all about? Why do we have it? A really popular teaching about shame, and one that resonates with me, is that shame is like but different than guilt, in that guilt tells us I did something wrong. Shame tells us I am wrong. I am inherently wrong, bad, unworthy, unlovable. So it's not about our action, our behavior, or our choices. It's about who we are at our core. And many of us, when we feel shame bubble up, we treat it like guilt. We try to take action to get away from this feeling of shame. Guilt can be resolved through action. We can make amends, we can change our behavior, we can apologize, we can take action to address guilt. But in order to be effective in addressing that icky feeling and resolving it and moving into something different, we need to have an underlying belief that we're good, we're lovable, we're capable, we're worthy of love and of existing in our community, on our planet. So we can't really use these tools that are effective in dealing with guilt to address shame, because just by the very nature of trying to fix whatever it is that we believe is bad about us, we're feeding the belief that we're bad. Okay, so shame, this idea, this belief that we're not good, that we're not worthy, we're not lovable. Why would we have this capability? Most of us, when we feel this way, it's a deep wound. It's, for most of us, it's something from our subconscious, something that was planted in us from a very young age. And so there may be stories around that, or there may not. It might just be a feeling that just comes up and you don't really know why, and you're looking for the reason why you feel that way. You're trying to create stories around it. Why would we have this mechanism? And it's not hard to figure out. If you think about other emotions, like we have normal, healthy fear. Something startles us, or we're unsure of a situation. We have that feeling of fear that's there to protect us. We take action. It's a motivating sensation, right? Oh my gosh, I'm afraid. I need to do something about it. If we can't address that for some reason, if we're stuck in a situation where we can't respond in a healthy way to a feeling of fear, it turns into something else. It turns into panic, or it turns into trauma. And that's a mechanism in our body that's like fear amplified. It's like the emergency state. Everything else has failed. We're now in red alert. We need to do something to survive, or to at least minimize damage as long as this situation is occurring. Guilt is the healthy response to, something didn't go right. I did something wrong. When we can't address that, for whatever reason, the next notch up The emergency state of guilt is shame. And it makes sense. What do you experience in your body and in your psyche when you feel ashamed? Most of us, many of us, experience shame as kind of a drawing in. Like, I want to hide myself away from the world. I don't want to interact with people. If I do, I'm sure going to put on a mask that I'm nice, I'm happy, everything's fine. And if you think about the health of the community, that makes sense. If I'm behaving in a way that's not okay for everyone around me and I can't address that, shame is an appropriate emergency response to make me shut down, stop, change my behavior so I'm no longer harming myself or those around me. It makes sense. The thing about the shame that most of us carry, though, that kind of deep-rooted, that shame that was put there when we were little tykes, is that it's not true. You are lovable. You are inherently good. That's my most core belief, is that everybody in their core is good, is lovable. I don't really believe in evil people. Evil actions, for sure, but not evil people. And so shame tells us something that isn't true. It tells us that we're bad, that we're unlovable. So what do we do with it? And as I mentioned before, very often stories will start to swirl. Here's why I feel bad. This thing that I did earlier today, or this always happens when I have this conversation with my mother, because we have this relationship, and there's a time and a place for doing that work in therapy with a therapist or with a really good friend who you know can be a reliable ear for that conversation and just hold space for you to do that work. But in the moment that shame arises, there's something else we can do with it that's really, really healthy and can really help you to start to hold it, be with it, create great big space for it so that it's not so sticky, so it doesn't stick to you. Because like I said, when we try to treat it like guilt, figure out why do I feel so bad, convince myself otherwise, or maybe I can change something and make this feeling not happen anymore, we're feeding the belief that there's something inherently wrong that needs to be fixed. Does that make sense? Right? So let's practice for just a few minutes sitting with shame and holding space for it. Find a comfortable seat, whatever works for you, in a place, a location that feels safe. And if you want to close your eyes, go ahead and let them fall closed. Turn your attention to your breath. Notice what's there. Imagine that you are just a great, big, vast, maybe even endless container that can hold any feeling, any thought, any belief, anything that arises. No matter how big or bad it feels, it's small enough to fit in the container of you. And just invite in that sensation of shame. Maybe there is something that's readily available to you, a time recently when you felt shame. And maybe there isn't, and you can spend a moment just doing a little brief exploration. Was there a time in your life when somebody shamed you? Or when you shamed yourself? Sometimes just that phrase, "you should be ashamed of yourself," can take us right back to that child that felt so unworthy. And notice if you can feel the sensation. If it does arise, notice what your first reaction is. How do you try to get away from it? How do you try to make it go away? And instead, can you turn your attention right to it? Instead of moving your attention up and out or going into fix-it mode, can you look right at that feeling and sensation that comes with shame? Notice and maybe even name to yourself where you feel it in your body. What does it feel like? Maybe your stomach is tight and you're not wanting to breathe, and your fingers are tingly and you've completely forgotten that you have toes because you can't even feel your lower body at all. Maybe it's something completely different than that. Notice what it feels like in your body and watch that sensation. Give it even more space. Exaggerate it in your body and in your mind. Give it permission to be there. You're just this great, big, loving container that can hold whatever arises. If the sensations change, follow them with your attention. What are you feeling now? Where is it in your body now? What strategies are maybe popping up that you sometimes or often use to shut it down, numb it out, distract yourself, make it go away? Pause, breathe, feel it instead. Hold space for it. And as you're breathing, feeling, and watching, imagine that this vast container of self is really a loving mother. You are playing the role of this wildly accepting, universally loving mother. And if you had no role model for that in your own youth, imagine what she would be like. Imagine that you are that great big love holding all of this sensation of shame. And as this immense loving mother, now imagine that shamed self resting in your embrace. She may be very small. She may be making a lot of noise. Whatever form she takes, hold her in absolute, non-judgmental, unconditional love. And we're not loving our shamed self to make the shame go away. We're loving that self just as he or she is, full of shame, maybe full of pain, wanting to hide away. We're giving that self unconditional love just as she or he appears right now. And notice how that inner self is feeling now. Has anything changed? Are you feeling the sensations somewhere else in your body? Have your thoughts and sensations changed? What's there now? Give it space, watch it and feel it, and breathe. Bring your attention back into that inner self, that self of shame. And I'll invite that version of you now to deeply receive the love that was just offered to you. Although you may not feel like you deserve it, there may be stories swirling around about it. Let them swirl. We're not paying attention to the stories right now. They can happen. We're not going to jump into that pool. Instead, we're going to sit here, feel these feelings, and notice, hey, I was offering love to myself. Can I receive that? Go ahead and say to yourself, I deeply receive the love that is mine, that unconditional, great big mother love. I am lovable just the way I am. I don't always do the right thing. And that's okay, I can address that. But at my core, I am lovable, I am capable. I deserve to be here. I am good. Take a deep breath. Allow that truth into your body as much as you're able right now. Breathe it in and place both hands over your heart. Bring your attention to your breath and feel all the places where your body is making contact with whatever it is you're seated on or resting upon. We'll come back now to the space around us, letting your eyes open, slowly taking in the space just in front of you, and then bit by bit, more and more, until you're fully back. This can be really big work. So you might find that 10 minutes is not nearly enough to be able to hold what's there, to be able to send yourself that love. It might take a lot of practice. And so spend as much time as you feel called to spend. Come back to it again and again, as often as you feel called to return to this practice. And know that it is the bigger truth, that you are lovable, you are good, you deserve to be here in this community, in this world, just as much as everybody else. Thanks so much for joining me today. Namaste.